Have you seen Dirty Business on Channel 4? It's available now on 4 On Demand. It's about the state of our rivers and the problem of sewage overspills in our water.
You think that's poo? Of course it's not poo. Wash it off, scrub it.
In the year that I have data for, they've dumped sewage 1,000 times.
We're dumping it straight into the river.
We've got to get this to the Environment Agency.
We want to strip out as much unnecessary regulation as possible. You want water companies to monitor their own pollution.
These aren't accidents. It's a policy.
Close the beach.
There is no evidence.
All we ever do is give you the evidence. Nothing ever happens.
Well, people are speaking up on behalf of our rivers in Yorkshire today. A paddle-out protest happening across the country. Over 50 events. It's being run by Surfers Against Sewage. York Rowing Club are on the Ouse today as part of these events. Robin is from York Rowing Club.
I have rowed on the Ouse for 8 years. It's a lovely river. It's beautiful. But most people in York probably don't realise what's going on underneath the surface. So the River Ouse is the second most polluted river in England in 2025. And we've had sewage, as far as we can tell, pouring into it earlier this week. We want that to stop. We want to end sewage pollution. This is something that's been happening for 30 years since privatisation. This has got worse and worse. And today we're just calling for that to finish properly. We've been talking about this for decades. It's time to actually put a plan in place and stop this from happening.
I'm aware people will be having their breakfast, but if I'm honest, and this is just a fair warning for anyone who is eating their breakfast, I think sometimes it is actually helpful to really kind of lay out in no uncertain terms how disgusting some of the things that you might be finding in the river is. What kinds of things have you seen, have you experienced whilst on the Ouse?
It's hopefully not too off-putting for people. Surfers Against Sewage are coordinating this protest, and they used to come up with some fairly disgusting stories about whole objects appearing in the sea beside them and on beaches. What we're talking about is something a bit more insidious. It's often rainwater mixed with household sewage. We can very rarely see entire objects, but what we can see is brown water. And that was what was pouring out of an outfall on St. Peter's Strait near St. Peter's School on Wednesday for at least 7 hours. You could clearly see a difference in the water. And that means we're aware of it as we row through it. We can see it. We can often smell it. And it's not just the sewage works downstream of York. There's outfalls all the way through York city centre that can be flowing with sewage and rainwater at any time, not just when it's rained. When we get our boats out of the water, and this is the same for rowers and kayakers and paddleboarders, we often have a brown tide mark on the boats, which we wash off with washing up liquid and water to make sure they are hygienic. And we're always told to wash our hands afterwards. We're told to keep our cuts and bruises covered up because as rowers, we do get a lot of those. And we just have to observe good hand hygiene. But inevitably, we get splashed in the mouth. So we know some of this stuff, you might see things that are unpleasant, like a brown scum on the surface of the water, but it's the stuff you don't see that can actually make us ill. And we're only on the water some of the time. You think about the wildlife that are in there all the time, fish, swans, the odd kingfisher that we see. The animals and the impact on wildlife is something that, again, is relatively intangible to the vast majority of us, including people that spend time on the water.
Does it not make you think, blow this? I don't want to be on this water. There's literal poo in it. I'm getting stuff in my mouth. I've had enough of it.
Yeah, and it's a really good perspective. I'm sure most people think we're mad doing what we do once we know what's happening. And to be honest, many of us really haven't appreciated the detail of this. I certainly didn't until I started looking at it in December. And in the last 6 months, I have learned so much about what's actually happening. And I think genuinely, if most people knew, even with no connection to the river and the water, they would be disgusted. We do it still because we love it. Like, it is great out there. It's very good for our physical health, apart from the risk of being ill. It's very good for our mental health. It's great to be out there and appreciate nature. And fundamentally, we feel we should be allowed to do it. It should be safe. It should be much safer than it is. And there's a really great perspective from a group in York called Use It or Lose It. So there's a lot of stuff about bathing water in the news today because 13 new sites have been granted bathing water status. Use It or Lose It are hoping to campaign for York to have some bathing water status. And they are saying to people, like, we should be able to get in this river. It's disgusting, but it's not going to stop us, because unless we do it, there's less chance that we'll be actually able to safely do it in the future. And that genuinely is part of the reason why today is so important, is there's a risk that this is taken away from us, because in the legislation the government have proposed that went into the King's Speech on Wednesday, there is a clause almost in the law that makes some spaces too polluted to protect. Given the fact that the Ouse is the second most polluted river with sewage in England and Wales last year, a drought year, we don't want the Ouse to be too polluted to protect, because that is resigning that river to be the state it's in now forever, and damages the wildlife, damages our ability to safely take part in sports on it. And that includes people letting their dogs swim in it, and fishermen and fisherwomen. Everyone that engages with the river will have a much better environment if it's cleaner.
It's interesting because culturally, that obviously there are groups like yours that row on rivers and people who do open water swimming and swim in rivers and that kind of thing. There are countries in Europe where it's a much bigger thing to swim in water, and one sort of assumes that maybe that's because it's cleaner. Yorkshire Water say they're doing all they can, spending millions of pounds reducing overflows from their assets. The government's working on their Clean River Act. What do you want the government to do in this Clean River Act? And I suppose, do you feel hopeful, given it does feel like there are other places on the planet where there does seem to be a general... the water in rivers seems to be generally cleaner than it is here. So there clearly is a way.
Yeah, we have to be hopeful. I mean, all the people that are going to turn up today to protest and speak up for the river on the water or just walking on land, because we're doing both today. It's really important to us to have to be as inclusive as we can. So this isn't just about people on the river, it's about people walking beside us as well. We have to be optimistic. We've got to believe we can change things, but equally, nothing has gone the right way for 30 years. Things have just got worse and worse. I would use the analogy, it's been like boiling a frog. We started with privatisation with underinvestment in the existing infrastructure. The infrastructure has not been developed to raise the standards of how the water industry works. And this isn't just Yorkshire Water, this is every single water company in the country. And the situation probably is worse in terms of visibility in Northern Ireland than it is here. So there's been no investment in improving the standard of what leaves sewage works. And in fact, stuff that doesn't get to sewage works in the first place. And also the population has grown and there's been nothing keeping pace with population. Yet we've all been paying our water bills. And as a Yorkshire person, I take great offence when I don't feel like I've got value for money out of something. We've all been ripped off. The money we've paid to have clean drinking water and to have our sewage treated effectively has not been put to use in that way. The money we've paid has been paid to bosses, not leaders in water companies. I don't believe they have leaders. They have bosses. They have managers who get paid enormous bonuses for failing the system. The regulator has failed to apply appropriate governance to those water companies. And then the government, successive governments, have failed to make the regulator hold those water companies to account. So the result we have today, the water companies collectively in England and Wales have, if this number's right, £82.5 billion worth of debt. So they've laden themselves with debt. They've done that to pay dividends to shareholders. And they've also then paid themselves as water company bosses huge bonuses for actually underperforming as businesses. And we as consumers have paid the price because all our waste is not all of it is being treated properly. Nature has suffered, and we're just not getting the service we've been paying for because that money's been taken, and a lot of it has gone abroad. It's been offshored. It's left the UK economy. So what we're saying is nationalisation should not be taken off the table, and nationalisation, I don't believe, has to be expensive. These businesses that are providing these water services are morally bankrupt, and I also think actually they're financially bankrupt. If they were held to their obligations to process wastewater and sewage safely and effectively, they can't do it. They're breaking the law every day.
Robin, good to talk to you. If people want to join your protest today at the Ouse, what do they need to do?
Yeah, so please just turn up. So we're going to start at 11 o'clock at Marygate Tower. We'll have a safety briefing. So safety is super important to us, not least because of what's in the water. But we're conscious that the river can be dangerous. We're going to be safe. We'll talk about what we're going to do during the day. We'll have an address from both Rachel Maskell MP and Luke Charters MP. And we'll also have a Team GB athlete there to talk to us as well. And then we will proceed on land over Scarborough Bridge and down towards York City Rowing Club at the same time as 4 rowing clubs, 3 or 4 kayaking clubs, paddle boarders, and maybe a few others as well, proceed down on the water. And we'll go underneath Lendal Bridge around 11:45, down to Ouse Bridge, and then down to Skeldergate Bridge, where that water protest finishes. And then, if the conditions are okay, at the Blue Bridge, where the Foss joins the Ouse at 1:45 later this afternoon, we will have people wild swimming, if at their own risk, if we think it's safe for them to do that.
There was Robin Norton from York Rowing Club there, and York rowers on the Ouse today from 11. We have approached Yorkshire Water about this. They say they're in the second year of a 5-year delivery programme of £1.5 billion investment into more than 480 storm overflows, with many projects underway in Leeds, Bradford, Barnsley, Sheffield and parts of North Yorkshire. This follows a programme in the previous delivery period that made improvements at 118 overflows. As a result, in 2025, they reduced the number of discharges into watercourses by 24.5%. following on from a 12% reduction in 2024. So there we go. Had a message from Gary saying, I think that the bosses of the water companies should get into the rivers for a little swim and then soon stop polluting them if they were doing that. And really shout out to anyone who is brave enough to do any wild swimming today. I have personally been in situations where I've had a swim in a river and then had a bit of a dicky tummy afterwards, and it's not very nice, really, when you start to think about it. Ugh.